Such a classic pattern. We'll never see the likes of them again. It's a crying shame to lose something so beautiful. The nerve! How dare she come in here with them? Not even in the ground yet.
The fabric was threadbare before I even started. They weren't that comfortable. And that pattern is notoriously tricky for people with an actual bust. Rip, old stays. I've got a new pattern now.
Well, I never. Oh, that's enough. I've got a busk, and I'm not afraid to use it.
You all have been dying to know how the Laughing Moon 115 pattern is, so let's make a new pair of Regency stays. Before we make the pattern, we have to fit the pattern. Regency stays serve one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to defy gravity and push your yabos all the way up to your chin. They also support your back and straighten your posture. That's it. There's no waist reduction. These are meant to be lightweight, barely there, and could never. So what you're looking for when you're fitting your Regency stays is good lift, and they should be very comfortable with not a lot of visible wrinkling, since that usually indicates a fit problem. There's a historical option with cording and a theatrical version that's much simpler with boning. Today we're going to opt for the historical shape, but with the theatrical style boning. Welcome to mock-up number 1.5. I was having a heck of a time trying to get the bust fit on this pair of stays. I was getting no support whatsoever, and naturally I could not film that. The problem with that was twofold. One, even though they took the time to give us different widths for our gores to accommodate different size busts, the stays still were not coming up to the bust point. They were about an inch below the bust point, which was a serious problem. Even though the instructions say to lengthen and shorten here, that's not where we want to extend it for this particular problem. Instead, we're going to extend it 1 inch at the top, right at the bust area, and then grade that back down to the side where it fits fine. Unfortunately, this also means we need to extend up the length of the bust gore. The next problem has to do with the size of the bust gores. Because I was in the middle, I went one size up, and that was a mistake. I should have gone one size down. I had so much width that there wasn't enough tension to hold everything up. So I have went down one, and it's okay. I may go down just a little bit more. We'll see. We got to play with it a little bit. We have a new front, but we do not have a new back. And I think the next order of business is to tackle the back. We're getting a lot of wrinkling right here. Basically, the waist is too long in both the back and the side back. It's okay in the front. This time we are going to use those length and shorten lines and raise it by 1 inch. On the side back piece, you'll want to grade down so it still fits the side seam. After a couple of my mock-ups, I did end up straightening this out and adding length to the bottom instead because it was messing with the grain. Next, this cuts way into the back, which is a little uncomfortable on my body versus the red threaded pattern where there's a straighter back. So we'll split the difference here and make it curve inward just a little less to add some extra support to the side back. Welcome to mock-up number 2. Infinitely better than version number 1 and version number 1.5. I'm still getting a little bit of wrinkling here, but I don't think it's enough to warrant having to completely recut a new side and side back with a slightly smaller waist. I think we can try and squirrel it up by cutting up into the gores just a little bit. Maybe we'll try 1/4 of an inch first, and then if it's still bad, another 1/4 of an inch. Last time I put this on, I was experiencing a lot of discomfort in the center back. This is something that I experience as well in my older Regency stays. So I did something a little sneaky. I added an extra set of gores here. This is loose because I don't have it tied. The backs of Regency stays are very straight, but I am not. I'm very curvy. I have a sway back, and so there just wasn't enough space in there to accommodate that big curve that I have in the back. I didn't need all of that space. It's quite loose here because I added a full 3 inches at the bottom on both sides, but that's okay because it gives me room to, expand when you sit down. It is a little uncomfortable when I sit, but what can you do when you've got a big piece of wood right in the center front of your corset, right? This shoulder strap is staying up fine. This one is falling down. If you can't tell, I'm slanted this way. So I'm going to have to move this hole over. Now this is gonna run into the gore here, which I don't love, but I also feel like this whole section of gore is over a little too far. So I think I'm going to try and move it over by about 1/2 inch. Here you can see that in practice. I did a quick test of this on the mock-up and it definitely helped. Here you can see me making that change on my coutil. Coutil is not historically accurate for this time period, and in fact the instructions specifically state not to use it, especially if you're opting for the corded version because it makes it much more difficult to do the cording. But I need the extra support, especially in the bust. And I just happen to have some in my stash, so guess what we're using? Even if it is an awkward color. Now it's time to cut out of our fashion fabric. This is a tight woven cotton damask I hand dyed. I wanted lavender, but I didn't have the dye, so opted for baby pink instead, which is very off-brand, but like the 1890s, you need something pastel or white for all those flimsy, translucent cottons. Note that it's a good practice to trim off the seam allowances when making bodies, stays, and corsets, and marking the stitch lines for ultimate precision. Thanks to a careful pattern Tetris, I managed to eke this out of just 1 inch or 2 more than 1/2 yard, leaving me with enough fabric to tackle some 1790 stays down the line. Woohoo! Draw your boning channels on the fashion fabric using friction pens, or in this case, water-soluble ones. Good morning. Last night I got everything for the stays marked and I serged all of the side edges of the stays themselves. And I think the plan for today is to try and get all of the boning channels sewn and get the gores inserted and the eyelets done. Basically, all of the preliminary hand sewing. I wasn't in a rush for these stays and now I am. I need to get them at least into the final fitting stage, if not completely done, by the end of this week, because I need them for fitting for a very special collaboration you're gonna see later this summer. It's a lot of work, but we can do it, so let's get to it. First order of business is boning channels. I had a bit of a difficult time with this because the historical version only has the cording marked and the theatrical version is a totally different shape, so I ended up using my old Redthreaded stays as a guide to where to put my boning. Basically, about 3/8 of an inch away from each seam. Obviously this came in a little bit afterwards. Above and below every bust gore and hip gore. On either side of the eyelets, of course. Plus, as recommended by Laughing Moon, thread. 1 short-ish piece of boning on the side of the bust on both sides. Now the scary part, cutting those slits for the gores. Stay stitch around each edge. And of course I made it more difficult for myself by once more adding lace to the gores, but it's just so pretty. Pin and stitch the gores, tapering your seam allowance down to nothing right around the dot near the pointy end. Don't be worried about this hole, we'll fix it in a bit. Press the edges out. Then carefully top stitch over the raw edges. This is real time, precision over speed. If you're enjoying this video or are excited to see this pattern finally made, I would love for you to drop down into the comments to say hello. And while you're down there, maybe give the video a thumbs up. These small little things go a long way into helping this channel out, and it's greatly appreciated. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to my contributors over on Ko-fi. Thank you for helping me to run this channel. I could not do it without you. I've linked below if you'd like to contribute, and I've also linked to our new Discord if you'd like to join and chat with me and other fans of the channel. With that miserable bit over and done with, now you can tackle the eyelets on the back. Note that this style of stays is good from the Regency period through about the 1840s, and metal grommets were invented right around 1830, so if you care about these things, make sure you opt for eyelets on your earlier period stays for a more historically adequate look. Me, I just prefer making eyelets over whacking the grommets in. For this period where you're not really cinching the waist in, you don't need your eyelets or grommets close together. I'm using the recommended 1.5 inch distance, spiral laced. All right, this is where we're at. I'm still getting a fair amount of wrinkling, particularly in the back. I think part of that problem is that my boning is not in there tight enough. I can fix that. I ended up adding 2 pieces of boning here in the center front, and then also another piece of boning right here between the 2 gores, just to help stabilize it a little bit. If I really wanted to get it flat, I could add another 2 here, but I think I'm just gonna hold off on that. A lot of the wrinkling you're seeing is because I was rushing and assembling this during burnout at the same time. I could have done a much better job. I could have really tried to get my boning channel straight, and I didn't. However, I'm quite comfortable, so I'm gonna leave it as is. And I think we're good to actually start assembling this. Also, check out my new busk. Thanks, I made it. It was super easy. Poplar board, sanded it down, made it a little thinner than it was. The hardest thing was rounding off the edges. As you can see, it's not very straight, but that's neither here nor there. It'll do. Really excited. Sewing up the seams, we're sewing up the seams, oh yeah! Time to trim the top and bottom seam allowances to 1/4 inch. Last night, I braved the insufferable evening heat, went out there and sanded all of the boning down. And now all we have left to do is bind all of our edges. And my least favorite part of any corsetry project, securing the boning by sewing the top and the bottom edge. If you're using the right needle, the machine will stitch through your zip ties or synthetic whalebone, but that's no promise that the needle won't snap or the machine gets angry, so slow your speed down. Also, because I've opted here to not have a lining, only a fashion fabric and inner lining, I decided to cover the raw edges of all the gussets with twill tape so they wouldn't fray too much. Now to tackle binding the edges. I know a lot of people like to use leather for durability, but in the decades that I've been making boned supportive garments, I've never really seen the need when twill tape or even standard bias tape will do the trick. Most of our cases, we're not wearing these things every day, we're only putting them on once in a while, and so that durability isn't quite as important. Here I've decided to bind the center back first, then cover over that to do the top and bottom edges. The instructions on how to create the removable busk pocket confuse the heck out of me, so I've decided to do my own thing here, and you're welcome to take this idea, or you can noodle out Laughing Moon's version if you prefer. First, clipping the inner lining down so it can be hemmed. Then fold the twill tape over just the fashion fabric, but we'll also add a little rectangle of double-layered linen and encase that in the tape too. 2 eyelets into the rectangle and a little bit of tape to hold it down. Then you can put in your busk and secure it at will. All right, so with all of the tape put on, our eyelets sewn. All we have left to do is to floss the points of all of the gussets. This is a really cool little detail and not something I've seen. I personally thought this was something that you did in the late Victorian period with your boning, but apparently not. You floss your gores, and that is why they left the very tip of the gore in the instructions loose. Let's change the camera angle and I'll show you what I mean. The instructions are pretty vague, just sort of like, do whatever kind of stitching you want. So I've opted here for a little bit of a fan using some matching floss. I start at the very center and make stitches grading both out and closer to my one insertion point in the center bottom of the gusset. Once that side is done, go back and tackle the other side. I did try to start at one side and go all the way around, but it was very uneven. Probably a me problem, let's be honest. Here it is finished. These took way longer than they were supposed to and didn't turn out quite as well as I'd hoped, but it's all my fault and not the fault of the pattern. I still think they look pretty good, and I suspect once I have some time to break them in, the wrinkling issues will work themselves out. I'm finally starting to recover from the burnout over here, but trying to make these stays while burned out was not the greatest decision I've ever made. But with them done, we can move on to some projects that have been in the wings waiting, including an 1830s day dress, an 1830s ball gown for Chicago, fabulously purple Spencer jacket, and that very special collaboration I was talking about that you'll see later this summer when I get back from Japan. If you've enjoyed this video and can't wait to see more Regency content, why not check out this video where I made the most notorious Regency style ever known to personkind, the English Regency court gown. That's it for me. Thanks for watching. I love y'all, and I'll catch you in my next video.